Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Dan Capello. Dan is the founder and CEO of Deliberate Evolution. His company helps leaders find balance in success. In a world that often chooses between professional and personal fulfillment, Dan helps guide you to the intersection of both. In addition to Dan's coaching, he's also a keynote speaker, as well as the author of the book, Deliberate Evolution, Journey to Success. Prior to starting his company, Dan spent 3 decades as a chef. You can find Dan on LinkedIn by searching Dan Capello, going to his website, www.dancapello.com, or by email at dan@dancapello.com. Hello, Dan. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Dan Capello?
Well, success is, it's really the balance. It's our first job is at home. Our second job is what we do for a career. And a lot of times we swap it around and we actually take the time that we promised our family and we sell it to our career, and we really become out of balance. Mm-hmm. So to be able to get that balance, that if you can get that balance, then everybody's happy because you're happy. And if you're not happy, nobody's happy.
So I want to take that and dive into that a little farther, because you have had a full career in an amazing industry. As a foodie myself, I love good food and good chefs, and you were definitely one of them, having a full career in it. And now you've really stepped into this coaching, leadership, helping others find their balance. For you, what was it like being a chef and having that full career in it? And what was the moment like, or moments leading up to deciding to no longer be a chef, that you said, this isn't what I want to be doing anymore?
Well, yeah, I mean, once a chef, always a chef, but it's to help other people. That's the goal. Before, throughout my career, it's always been about me, me, me. And that's what a lot of people are, the ego, self-centered, whatever. And we look for that recognition, but we don't have the self-recognition. And the part that I learned that I think was the most helpful was actually later in my career, was after a real bad burnout, is what is the cause of burnout? How do you get over it? And how does it function in life? Because I mean, burnout's not really bad, because burnout's not a thing. Burnout's a perception. And when you get that perception wrong because of the way you see it, then that's when you get all the problems. And I think if we can help people find that out beforehand, then they can balance their lives and they don't ever reach burnout. Because burnout is a symptom. It's not a destination.
And I love that, because it's so true. It is really something that can push you to realize what is the bigger picture that's going on, why you might not be liking what you're doing anymore, maybe how your own journey to what success means has changed, what your own time commitment can look like. So for you, when you were a professional chef and in that line and growing in your career, what was your burnout like? And what was that aha moment for you?
Well, I always say it's like when you get burnout, the way I did it is you think, a lot of times in your career, it's like, what else can I be doing, for my career and do all that. But when you're standing there and you're going, what else could I be doing? And it's like, you see all the things that you should be doing and you could be doing, but you're not involved with what you're doing anymore. And that's when you get that moment of clarity, is you have to separate yourself from what you do and who you are. Because a lot of times in our careers, who we are is is our job title. And when that goes down, we go down. Because if they criticize Dan, the chef, they criticize Dan personally. But if they criticize Dan, who happens to be a chef, then they just criticize the food. And it's not that we don't lose ourselves. But, when we can't self-recognize and self-accept and be self-aware about what the criticism was or what's going on, then we just fall apart.
For you, how do you try to help individuals through your coaching to find that balance, as they might be struggling and having those symptoms of burnout, or might have not reached burnout yet, but are having difficulty with the balance?
Well, a lot of it, I think, is you have to go back to the basics. And, there's a lot of people out there that are helping people, and they say, well, I have this amazing thing, and it's this one thing, and, I created it and I gave it the special name. And it's like, no, it's not new. Nothing's new. None of it's new. We've been struggling this since the Industrial Revolution. Since the 1800s, we've been struggling with this work-life balance, because we used to spend 95% of our time outside. Now we spend 95% of our time inside. In 100 years. So you have to look at it and be self-aware and go back to the basics of finding out what is your values and your priorities. And we don't sit down and do that deliberately. Mm-hmm. And because when you do that, and there's a lot of people out there that I have this goal, I have that goal, and I have that goal. No, you can't multitask goals. You can have one goal, one North Star, one overreaching ideal in your life, and everything goes up. And yes, you can have multiple goals, but it is to be the best person at this or to do that, because to reach our potential, people don't realize potential is not reachable. Every time you reach your potential, guess what? There's another day. So that means you got more potential. And people don't realize that. They think my end goal needs to be a finite, mine used to be, I want to be the executive chef at a country club, at a really nice country club. And I did that multiple times. But that's not a goal. That's a stop along a real goal, which is to be a great culinarian, that you give back to the people, you give back to your staff, you create the next generation. That's where that evolution is. And that's the whole point of the book and everything is we have to be, everybody's like, I progressed into the next level and the next level. That is a deliberate evolution of the persona that you're living. Everybody else is just parts in it. And we are the main character. And a lot of times we don't hold the pen, and that's, you're not deliberate.
So for you, how do you try to be deliberate with your time, and as you're starting to see things shift or feel the shift yourself, get in realignment through your journey?
A lot of it is, I think, going back to what's important and making sure I schedule what's important. And when you schedule what's important, then everything else can happen. It's like you can't be gone all the time and expect life to happen at your house, or be gone from work and life to happen at work. You have to balance it, but you also have to have that self-awareness that you are present when you're present. And that's one of the biggest things is we get up in the morning and we fly out, and then blah, 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 and we pass in the evening and blah, blah, blah. And we're not deliberate about, we eat dinner and everybody's distracted together. Oh, great. But to find those deliberate moments, because it's going to be those moments at the end of our life, we're going to be like, I remember the time when we did this, or you're going to say, well, I regret us having the cell phones at the table and everybody was distracted together, because that's what we do nowadays. We sit around and we're distracted together.
How do you try not to be distracted together? Because it is something, like you just said, happens all the time. And personally, for myself, I've gotten to the rule of, like, if I'm in my family house with my family, when it comes to dinner time, the cell phone stays upstairs. I don't bring it downstairs. If you try to contact me while I'm downstairs, interacting with my family during that core time, you're just not going to reach me. And that could be lunch too, of being out with friends and just making sure you're present. But I see it more times than not. And it personally annoys me sometimes too, because I'm like, I'm trying to bond with you, catch up with you. We need to not be diving into the Instagram or the Facebook and me being here with you, but then also feeling like I'm not actually here with you because you're on your phone. How do you try to make sure that you don't get on your phone during, those quality times with individuals and you're present, but also what happens if the people around you are? How do you try to have that conversation?
Yeah, that's a tough one. You can control yourself, but you can't control others. And I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and that's a challenge right there. I was just telling my wife, was it 2 days ago or yesterday, one of the days, and we were out there, and she was like doing something with one hand, she had the phone in the other hand. And I started laughing, and she got upset. And I'm like, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing that I saw something that were cyborgs. And the people were like, no, we're not. And it's like, yes, we are. We just have external devices. We have these watches that have all this information on it. We have these devices we carry around with all this information in it. It's just not inside of her head. And, I have to physically like put it in my pocket. I have a timer on all my social media. There's a timer that goes off and I have to re-enter a code to do it. And, because it's so easy to get sucked into it. And it's just like media, processed foods, all that it was all created to go to our human instinct, intuition, and go in there and like pull us out of it, like that sugar, the sugar in they put in everything, it makes it addictive. What they do with the social media with the little dopamine drip, that's addictive. And we have to actually just separate ourselves. Like you said, you put yours upstairs, I try to put mine on a pocket. And people don't even realize they sit on the table, but that just gives a clear signal that that you put it on there because you might pick it up. So, like in an interview, you're interviewing somebody, and they set it on the table. When they get to the meeting, it's like they're not 100% there then.
Because then if it goes up, it's exactly to your point with that one too. Because if you set it on the table, and I do that sometimes, I'll come down, I'm like, okay, I'll just say it right next to me, right? Or, you're eating breakfast in the morning, but you bring your phone down and you sit it right next to you. It's like, okay, this way, if I get a message, if I get that email, I can check. It's right there. I see the phone light up. I know it's there. I can immediately turn and put my attention that way. So you are very accurate with that one. It is something that even putting it on the table demonstrates that you're not always going to be potentially fully focused during that time.
Yeah, I mean, everybody looks at what's the most expensive thing we have, and the most valuable thing that we have, and it's time and all this. No, it's presence, being present. Because if you're going to be present with someone and fully present, that's a gift.
And I love that. And for you, how do you try to demonstrate, or in what different ways do you make sure you're fully present in different moments?
Yeah, well, like you said, like one of the things you got to put the device away and ignore, and then, but a lot of the times we are distracted together, and that's the bad part. And a lot of people, the stress of life is really hard, and when they're not simmered in work or whatever, they distract themselves, and it's really hard in being in a distracted world, because that's what we live in. To be undistracted, I'm not going to say I'm perfect and all that. It's really hard in a distracted world, because you can't really say, hey, just put your phone down. You're like, I need to take care of myself. I need to police myself. And, everybody has their own issues they have to work through. And that's the worst part about it, is is every single person on this planet has trauma, whether it's a physical trauma as a child, the mental abuse, and then you have the symptoms, you see them, use perfectionism, people pleasing, anger. All these things are repercussions of the trauma that we had as a child. And when you start trying to address people and how they act and how they're trying to cope, then you're getting in the way of nature of that coping mechanism, which is society distraction. That's a not a good place to tread. I mean, yes, you can say things, but then you got to, wait a day until they talk to you again.
Well, and it's true. I love the important aspect you brought up there as well is policing yourself, and that no one is perfect. You brought it up. I put my phone upstairs, but there's definitely times where I'm super busy. I'm waiting on this email, right? I'm sitting like, oh, the second this email comes in, I gotta respond. So I wear an Apple Watch if I go out or whatever it might be, and I'm wearing that watch, and I've been out with my boyfriend and we're walking and I'm like, I hear the vibration and I look up, and then he started laughing at me because one time we were walking like 5 minutes and my watch kept dinging. And so I kept looking because I was like, I really want this response from this person. And he just started laughing like, you just keep looking at your watch. And mind you, half of them were text messages. And I was like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to be present. I'm not going to respond to those. Those can wait. But if that email did come through, you knew, okay, now I need the 5 minutes to get distracted. And then I could regroup myself and refocus. But it is also having that transparency of like, okay, I'm not perfect right now. This is what's going on. And this is how I can, like give me the space that if this comes up, like just give me the 5 minutes, then I could stop thinking about it, push forward, and then I can become undistracted again. But for you as a coach, what is something as trying to help individuals balance both that professional and personal success and that intersection of both? What do you come across a lot, and what is not a key thing, but one of the aspects you try to work with people on?
Well, I mean, so you get the basic set and the foundation, which is your values and your principles and all that. But, one of the second biggest thing is self-awareness and finding that because, we say, okay, I can do this good and I can do this good. It's like, but what don't you do good? What do you do bad? What are you really bad at? What are you horrible at? What are you afraid of? What do you don't want anybody to know that you can't do, or stuff like that? You have to know all of it. You have to know all the good to find, the good and the bad make what you are. Mm-hmm. And when people hide that, it really causes the imbalance because you're not self-aware. And if you can't be self-aware, it makes your deliberate decision-making hard because then you're deciding out of fear. You're deciding out of what you think other people want you to decide. You're not deciding for yourself then. And then you start losing that self-respect. And that's a big thing because a lot of times we don't even respect ourselves. We treat ourselves, we don't even treat ourselves like someone we care about sometimes. We can mentally abuse ourselves, we physically abuse ourselves and all this. And it's like, but we would never do that to a loved one, but we do it to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And, if you can solve a lot of that and just be aware, because I tell everybody, it's like, I suck. We all suck. And you admit it. Let's just get over it. Let's pull it off the Band-Aid, get the white elephant out of the room. It's like, we're all horrible people. We have the ability to be horrible people. But through our self-awareness, we can be good people. And you can decide what are the things that I need to be doing that I'm not doing. And then what are the things I'm doing that I need to stop doing that I know I should be stopped doing. And if you can just solve those couple of questions, life is so you can be present, you can be mindful, you can respect, you get empathy, because you can see, instead of looking at someone from a view, like I had a lot of anger issues and I didn't have much empathy because I had zero empathy for myself. And when I decided that's what I was going to do, and my main job is to figure out how to make me happy, because if I can make me happy, then everybody around me is going to be happy. If I'm miserable, everybody around me is going to be miserable and they don't want to be around me. So you're going to actually draw or repel based on this self-awareness. And if you can solve that problem, because recognition, we all want recognition in our job, but how do you do that? Okay, you be really good at your job, but then also you have to be not extroverted, but you have to go over the top and do things for other people at work. You got to take on projects that most people won't do. Mm-hmm. And then you have to be around the right people. And, I always say it's it's who you know, whatever that saying is, it's who you know that matters. I'm like, no, it's who you know and how they feel about you that matters. Because if they know you, that doesn't mean they have a good feeling about you. So.
And I love that. And I think it's so true. You have to be conscious of who you surround yourself, how they feel about you. Because like you just said, it isn't just about the people you stand next to, because they can hate you. And let's, like you said earlier, let's rip the Band-Aid off, right? You can hate someone but still work with them, but then it's not going to be a great experience for either party. There's less room for personal and professional growth, potentially, depending on what environment you're in, because you don't really want to be working with that person. And there's a lot of opportunities to then get misalignment as well as you go through that journey. Another important thing that you had brought up is the aspect that it really all starts with ourself. You said that a few different times in different ways so far, as we are either the repellent or the person that draws everyone in. And what way do you want that to be? You want to be the person that can bring everyone else in. You don't want to be repelling people through your actions, but also that's done in a way of understanding yourself and what your purpose is and how you interact and your own emotions. There's a lot of things that go into it, but it can also shift over time. As you work with individuals and you start to see that shift and they're working through different aspects, how do you see people's personalities also change?
Well, but the person that they used to be before the world decided how they were going to be, because the world changes us without our permission. And when we can go back and be and laugh for no reason, to have to have the emotions and be able to have all the emotions, that's it's okay to cry. It is. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to be sad, because all of these is part of life. And if you can't experience all the emotions, you're not living life. And if you can be present and live life and feel life, then, it's like when someone dies that you love, stand in the grief, because it's going to make you appreciate life even more and everybody else. If you get angry, sit in that. Why? Was it worth it? Was it a misunderstanding? Because we live our lives as a misunderstanding because we won't communicate. It's like we won't say what we're thinking. We'll say what people expect us to think. But if you be authentic, which is really hard, and even self-actualize, like Maslow's going up through his different things, to the hierarchy, it's all those different things that make you human that got beat out of us or taunted out of us or bullied out of us or whatever. As we grew up, we started losing all those things, but we start getting them back. When we start getting them back, we're a person. And, to be a human is not to be, it's not flesh and blood. That's birth. That's a given. But to be a human is compassionate, empathetic, helpful, protective, all these things, but it all goes with we're part of society. And the ego is really, because I used to have a real big ego, but I always say the ego is the one with the loudest person in the room. You've heard that is the one with the most fragile ego, because they have to, like, I'm important, because they were made not important before, or whatever, I'm not good enough. And that's the whole, if you can figure that out, then everything else is, then they're yelling at your job and all that. It's like, they're not yelling at you. They're yelling because they're upset, they're hurt, they're traumatized, and they're spitting it out or spewing it out at everybody. Mm-hmm. And if you take it personal, it's going to hurt.
For you, as you went down your book journey as well, in addition to your coaching, what drove you to make the decision you were going to write your book, and what impact do you hope it makes on others?
Well, the book is really a journey. It's my deliberate evolution. And then I have 3 other chefs in there, and it's part of their deliberate evolution of what's possible. Mm-hmm. And, I talk about my sexual trauma in there. I talk about being bullied as a kid. I talk about a lot of personal things. I'm very vulnerable in that book at the beginning, because there's so many people out there that are hiding that. They're hiding that. It's keeping them back because they won't admit it. And when they can tell, to be a great leader, you have to be a leader of yourself. And, if you're still trying to compensate for never being good enough, or being bullied, or if you're still working on that and it's still holding you back, then it's hard to be present as a leader. And so I went through, after my burnout, because I was like at 300 pounds, I saw the picture of myself and I was like, who is that? I didn't recognize myself. My coping mechanisms had caught up with me so much. And I was 300 pounds, and it was like, but I never saw me growing to 300 pounds. And then I did a Spartan race and lost like 70 pounds. And then that's when I ran into the mental problems. And so, you know what? I was like, I worked through all that. I was like, I was able to work through that. And if I could have worked through that 20 years before, man, what could I have done? What opportunities could I have not missed because of my ego?
And I think I want to touch upon 2 things here. One, you brought up the fact that, and I think it's really important to hone in on this, you didn't see yourself growing to that 300 pounds. It was only once you were there. And that can be, through food, right? Especially if you love food like myself, I can snack and eat food all day long. But as you're doing it, it doesn't seem like you're eating all the time, or you're eating these big meals. It's only when you take this step back that also translates to other areas of your life as you're making poor decisions, whether it's going out all the time. When you make the decision to go out, drink with your friends, stay out till 3 a.m. every single night, and then show up to work, as you're making them, you're like, I'm just having a good moment today. But then you're not seeing how those consequences add up until you're standing in the thick of it. And you go, oh, wait, I didn't realize all these nights of partying has now led me to this moment. And if I knew back then. So it can really translate to a lot. So I loved how you shared that, because it is so true and relatable in so many different aspects of our lives that, we don't really look at things as that big deal in the moment, that one decision. But once you get there, you go, oh, wait, you have that epiphany. The second part of it too is what And my question to you, and I really want to hear your response on this, is like, when you were writing the book and you decided to be that vulnerable, especially because being vulnerable can be so difficult, especially in writing a book where it's in print and people are going to read it and have their opinions of it. What made you decide to be that vulnerable and open up to others so that they could connect with you and really leave that impact that you decided to leave with it?
That's the whole key, I think. And, like you said, there's going to be people that disagree. They're like, oh, he's looking for sympathy. And I write that multiple times in the book. It's like, if you think about it, David Goggins is a perfect example. He wrote really horrendous stuff about his life and what happened to him and how he got over it. But he got over it. Mm-hmm. He figured it out because he went back into it. And if we can't go back and deal with what our problems are, because our problems aren't the current day, our problems are perceptions that were created by what was said to us as a child or what happened to us when our brain was developing. We all have coping mechanisms. It could be food. It's like the alcoholic never wanted to be an alcoholic. They just slowly worked into it until one day they were like, it's like the 300 pounds. They were just like, I can't stop. Same thing with drugs or gambling or sex addiction or all this other stuff. It's like they didn't start out like that. None of us did. We all started out as a clean slate when we were born. And then the world had its way with us. And we couldn't decide. And if we can go back and admit that, because if you can admit you have a problem, you can fix it. If you say it's your problem, you can do something about it. If you keep blaming the world, then you will never, ever be able to do anything about your problem, because it's not your problem. It's my boss's fault. It's my wife's fault. It's my husband's fault. It's the kids. It's the neighbor. It's none of that. It's you. It's me. And that's the whole point. And to really heal yourself and be human, you have to be vulnerable. And, I was like editing this book. And going through Audible because I'm dyslexic because of part of my trauma. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make it Audible because there's somebody out there that's dyslexic, that has problems, that went through trauma, that needs to hear this. And I always say, if I can help one person, then the book's worth it.
And I think that's an important aspect of everything we do. It isn't about, and you had mentioned this earlier, like what you can take from someone else. It's what you can give. And one other thing you had mentioned is the fact that we all are shaped by things that we have been through. Anyone who says otherwise is, I would love to have a discussion of that with them about how nothing they have done or how someone has spoken with them or how a relationship, whether it's professionally, personally, whatever it might be, hasn't shaped their views today or the experiences that they have had from it. For you, as you are who you are today, I want to take one step farther back. You mentioned this, and I'd love to dive more into it. At 300 pounds, you decided, yes, I want to lose weight. This isn't who I want to be. But you took that challenge to a whole nother level when you decided, I'm going to go and dive in and train for a Spartan race. And you definitely accomplished that goal. So for you, what was the mindset you had to get yourself in as well, especially training for that kind of race and then being like, yes, I have to accomplish this. This is even when it's rough, when you might want to give up on the process.
Yeah, good question. That's it's got to be, you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm not gonna live like this anymore. I ran into that race and I'd lost 70 pounds and then COVID hit. And that was the start of my really bad burnout because it was just so much in the food industry We shut down, we laid people off, then we started going to go food. And then all of a sudden, later on, and then there was a whole thing, all the hoopla and all that. And then all of a sudden we open up again, and then there's no staff, and then there's no food, and then the price goes up, and then, people are upset. And, the point of getting to the race, that's that mindset. It's like, you don't give yourself an option. It's like, this is what we're doing. What happens after that, that's irrelevant. But one of my big mistakes was that was my destination, was that race. And so after the race, I'd met my goal. But see, now it's like, then you get distracted again. And that's where you need to have that overarching North Star, which is better health and better, relationship with yourself. But getting to the actual race, it's a matter, it's like you just don't give yourself an option. It's like one of those, because your brain is smarter than you are. Your brain's going to talk you out of it. Your brain's not going to go, when I was waking up every morning and going walking, it's like, it's raining, it's cold. It's like, so, it's that you don't realize this is not an option. Because the other option is you're going to be 300 pounds, you're going to die that way.
And I think that's important too, in any aspect of just not giving yourself the choice. The second you give yourself the leniency and you don't fully want to do it, right? Whether it's not that you don't want the angle or what those small milestones, you just don't want it today. The second you give yourself that leniency, you're going to find the reason why you shouldn't be doing it today. Like you mentioned, it's raining out. It's cold. I'm too tired. I'd rather sleep in the extra 45 minutes than go do this shower. I remember a time that I would go swimming once a week at like 5 a.m. because I had to be on my way to work by like 6:30. And I can wake up. I knew I could wake up at like 4:45, be at the pool in the water by 5. I could swim on average 20 to 34 laps in about just under 30 minutes, depending on how many I'm swimming. If I was swimming 34, I really could do it most time if I was awake enough in about 20 minutes. Get out, get back to the house in 30, within that 30-minute time span, and then you had to shower, right? Because no one wants to be smelling like chlorine, and then go off to work. And when we got to the thick of the coldness in January and February, when it's 20 degrees outside, there's snow on the ground, and you're waking up that early to then be cold walking out of the building. And I'm cold all the time. I'm cold when it's 75 degrees outside. So it was those times where I had to really push myself to be like, no, just do it. You'll be happy once you're in the water. You're not going to be thinking about how cold it's going to be when you get out. You're going to be happy you're in it, that you're swimming. It'll be 20 minutes of pure exercise. You'll be done, right? And that's how I had to look at it. But I also knew the second, 1 week happened where I was like, okay, we're heavily, by the time I get home, I might not be able to drive home. The weather was that bad. I was like, it might be, or it might just stop. Oh, well, you know what? I know I'd have to do all these things. I won't. And then the next week it was like, oh, this is happening. And then by week 3, I was like, wait, I just went 2 weeks. I have to regroup and do this. So it is one of those things, you start to get that leniency, and you have to tell yourself there is no other choice. Just do it. You'll be happy once you do it. And sometimes it's just repeating that. And when you were training, and even now to this day, when you don't want to be doing something, or you're telling yourself you just have to do it, how do you try to also motivate yourself in the same moment?
Yeah, that's so I decided I'm going to do another Spartan race in June, because I actually like the whole training and how I felt. I like the person that I was. So I'm actually going to do another one. I was going to go do it in Montana in June, just because I want to go to Montana in summertime. And, why not, do one of the longer races? Because the first one was like whatever, 3.1 miles. I was like, okay, well, because I go to the park over here, I have a park. It's pretty hilly. It's like 10 stories up and down, over 5 miles. And I go do that. And I'm like, well, I could do a 10, 12 mile race. So I was like, who does that? It's like, well, guess what? We're going to do it. But, you get the injuries because before I was 300 pounds, I had a skiing accident and I actually had surgery on both knees. And then this time too, it's like I've done stuff and, I was on top of a mountain climbing down and I slipped and fell and I'm like, I'm okay. And it's like, no, you're not okay. And so now you got to heal and get past that and get going. So a lot of it is just, you're like, it's not a straight line. Like you even said, there's those weeks like you get off one day, 2 days now, and then a week later, you're like, man, I got to get back in that. I got to get in that groove. I like it when I liked who I was in that groove because I was focused. And it's the same thing here. I slipped and fell, and it was like 2 weeks with my ankle, and but I was back out there, and it's like I missed this, and then you got to get back into it and get into the groove because it's just not. It's not the same, and they have. I've been doing a cold plunge, and I probably do it 5 times a week, and it's like, and I just do it right in the pool, and it's like the water's like 50 degrees. I think it's probably 40 something this morning. So it's like you just go in there and go, wow, this feels good. And do 3 minutes sitting in a pool that's in the 40s is yeah. I usually don't jackhammer, but this morning I was jackhammer. I'm like, it's in the 40s. I know it is because it was 30 something the past couple of days. And you just you got to be your brain's not going to let you off. It's going to win every time if you don't get up and stand up to it. And that's yeah, it's a rough day.
And I think that's a great point and a great way to start to wrap up the show is your brain. You have to train your brain as well and stay focused and be determined enough to be like, okay, I can last the full 3 minutes. It's freezing outside. It's minute 2. I could go one more moment. And sometimes for individuals, it's challenging yourself too, going, no, I can do this. Like, okay, can you go one more minute? Yeah, I can. And get in that mindset, right, as well. Dan, how can people connect with you if they want to talk to you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Dan Capello. I'm on Instagram. It's the official Dan Capello. And you can get me at my website is www.dancapello.com. And my email is dan@dancapello.com.
Well, thank you, Dan, for all of your insight today.
Oh, and I got my book coming out, Deliberate Evolution. That'll be after this already comes out, but that beginning of January, that's coming out. So
yes. And I appreciate all of those insights, and people could tune in and buy your audiobook or the written copy to hear more about your stories, and your experiences and how to find the balance between personal and professional success and keep holding that balance and challenging yourself as well. A few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is burnout isn't always a bad thing. It can be a symptom of a larger thing. Listen to what the burnout is trying to tell you, as well as you have to be able to separate what you do with who you are. Like Dan had mentioned, when someone complains about the food, if you take it as Dan is a chef instead of Dan is the food he has made, that is not as big of a deal. It's okay. Let me learn, let me grow and move on. When you separate the two entities, it helps you separate yourself, your growth, where time should be allocated as well as being present is the highest value item one can own. Be present with yourself, be present with others, and you can grow. But it's also the most valuable thing we can offer to someone else because you're giving them your time, and everyone is limited on the time they have. As well as when you are not being self-aware, it is hard to make deliberate decisions, which I think Dan touched upon throughout this whole conversation today and is so accurate. When you're in tune with yourself and holding yourself accountable, you can make sound-minded decisions. You can be deliberate with those decisions you make. You can hold yourself accountable with those decisions as well. And the last and one of my favorite things he had said is, to be a great leader, you have to be able to lead yourself. A lot of us forget that it isn't just about the actions we put out, but are we holding ourselves accountable? How are we leading ourselves to grow, to have that balance, to challenge ourselves as well? This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Dan Capello. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.